Hallå där! Time for another video. This one I will be grading 2 different shots which I filmed myself in the capital of Sweden, Stockholm. For this one I will be working color managed, and the first thing we will do is to go through the settings and talk a little bit about what's going on, input color space, timeline color space, output color space, and that stuff. Let's go. So let's open up the project settings, and usually under color management I work like this: DaVinci YRGB as color science, then I put the timeline color space to DaVinci Y Gamut intermediate, output color space Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. And if you have watched my other videos, it usually is like this, and the fifth node I put the color space transform. So usually in here I set the values on which I have been shooting on, and then I choose the output color space and output gamma. If we go back to the project settings again, today, like I said, I will be choosing to work color managed, and to be able to do that, I will go into the color science, choose DaVinci YRGB color managed, and then I will uncheck the automatic color management box, and from here color processing mode, I'll choose custom. So why do I want to work like this right now? The simple answer for that is that I want to learn this. And to be able to learn, you gotta test it out. Recently, or actually not recently, I've been watching their videos for a long time, but 2 really good YouTubers that has a lot of good videos about color management is Colin Kelly and Darren Mostin. Also, what I've done is that I've been going into the actual user manual of DaVinci Resolve 18, which I never ever thought that I would do, but there is a lot of good stuff about this, so highly recommend to download that manual as well. So with that said, let's jump back to Resolve again. The 2 clips I'm using today is A7S3, the Sony A7S III with S-Log3. The input color space, I want to choose the color space I was shooting on, which S-Gamut 3, S-Log3. For the timeline color space, I want to work in DaVinci Y Gamut intermediate, okay? And for the timeline working luminance, I will just choose SDR 100. The output color space, Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. The input and output DRT is, from what I understand, the way DaVinci transforms from and to different color spaces. So in here you can basically set the way that DaVinci is transforming, for example, S-Gamut 3, S-Log3 into the timeline color space, which is the DaVinci Y Gamut intermediate. And the output DRT is the way that DaVinci is transforming from the DaVinci Y Gamut intermediate color space to the output color space, which is the small Rec 709. From what I understand, DaVinci is a good alternative for this. So there you have it. These are the settings we'll be working with. And now notice what's happening with the clips here. So if I press save, you can see DaVinci's color management is now taking the S-Log3 information, sending it into the DaVinci YRGB where we will be working. Then it outputs the image into Rec 709, which we are viewing right now. Let's just go ahead and reset all the nodes. Now let's go ahead and grade like we normally would do. So let's start. I want to have a little bit of sky in the image as well. Let's start from here. I'll just go in with the primaries and make some basic adjustments here. Maybe a little bit like this. I'll go in here and let's bring the saturation up a bunch. Let's go 63. A lot of color, but I like it. It's Old Town in Stockholm. let's go ahead and create some more contrast. With the curves, I'll just make a slight S-curve like this. Something I want to do in this image is that this part in the middle is quite bright. So let's go in and make a window. And I'll choose the circle and adjust the aspect and make it smaller and drag it out a bunch. Some more softness, and let's go ahead and go in here. Something like this. Going into the curves again and just drag it down. Just drag it down. And somewhere here, I'm liking it a bit more. That's looking pretty nice. That looks great. Let's go ahead and go into the second clip. I'll just add serial node here. I'll go in and drag up the gamma a bunch. And this guy looks totally unusable. So let's take the gain down. And let's go up with the gamma again and take the gain down. We're really pushing the image now. And let's add a parallel and try to go in with the log wheels. Take the shadows and just start to bring them down. Something like this. I'll go ahead and label them as usual. Primes. Log. Let's add a serial before here. Try make some space here. Take this one. Input from there. And in this node, I'll be adjusting the white balance. So let's go in and adjust the temperature a bit. I think it's a little bit on the warm side, so I'll just drag it down a little bit. And maybe not that much actually. Let's keep an eye on the scopes and try to match it in the highlights. Looking good there. So from here, I will just add some saturation back to the image. Maybe somewhere here. And after that, I will make a window and just drag it over here somewhere. And I'll try to go a bit bigger. So something like that. And with the window we created, I'll just go in and add some contrast with the contrast knob here. What I want to do is to just add some contrast back into the church so it doesn't look that washed. Now you can see that the highlights are way too bright. So I will just go in and adjust the pivot. So I'll drag up the pivot. So with the pivot set to 0.91 in this case, we are mostly affecting the darker parts. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we have graded 2 clips in a color managed environment. And with that, I don't need to make the last node with the color space transform and transforming the footage from there. Now it's all happening in the background. The thing I asked myself when I started to take a look into this type of workflow is the grade I'm doing right here, where is that happening? Is it happening before the input color space or in the timeline color space or after the output color space? But if you go into the reference manual, which I conveniently have right here. Here you can see a flow chart of the RCM image processing pipeline. This basically the resolve color management. So like you can see here, from the source media, we selected our correct input color space. That is then transformed into the timeline color space, which we set to DaVinci Wide Gamut. So when we're in the timeline color space, we are in fact making our grade adjustments. And from the grade adjustments, the transforming to Rec 709, the output color space is happening. So the way I look at it now is here is like the input and here's the output. Oh, you can change this position. This is the input color space, and here we have the timeline color space, and here we have the output color space when we're working color managed. For me, this feels like the safest way of working. At least when I'm color grading my own footage, I know that I've only used Sony S-Log3, for example. Then like if you set these settings up, then you know that you are working within the correct color spaces. I hope that you find this interesting, and I feel like it's not too many videos about this topic out there, but as I said in the beginning, like check out Darren, check out Cullen, they're putting great stuff out there. And yeah, thanks for watching this one. See you another time.